Hi, welcome to another episode of MYD Global. I'm your host, Leanne Hackman-Carty. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Eileen Sweeney. Eileen has been in the area of corporate philanthropy for a long time. She's worked for major corporations, she's helping nonprofits, and she's really helping tell stories of the great work that's going on in the community and trying to match those organizations with corporations that care about the same things. So stay tuned as I talk to Eileen about how she is working with them and give some advice on how you can help get your story told. So stay tuned. Hi, Eileen. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks, Leanne.
So before we get started with our topic, can you just explain to the viewers a little bit about yourself, your background?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So I have had more than 25 years in corporate philanthropy, working across industries, from United Airlines to Motorola to briefly with Google, and then most recently in that role for a National Football League team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And after that, I started my own company where we work with nonprofits and we work with corporations, mostly on telling the stories of the good things that they do in the community.
And so, I mean, that's a lot of what philanthropy is about, right? It's almost selling your story. What do you do? What problem are you solving? And what can I do to help support you? When it comes to philanthropy, I mean, you've been in with nonprofits, with corporations. How do you think the world of philanthropy is changing?
I think over my career, the world of philanthropy has changed dramatically. I think 25 years ago or more, it was very quiet. It was something that companies maybe did on a very grand scale, but there was a reluctance to tell their story. And that has definitely shifted. I've also seen that companies now are proudly talking about what they do and are using that in some cases as, part of their marketing.
Yeah, well, and I would think with COVID and the fact that need has just ramped up tremendously on all these organizations. I mean, most haven't been able to run their events this year. So you just think the impact on their revenue, on their fundraising probably has taken a big hit. And I'm just curious, what's the kind of advice that you're giving organizations right now on how to stand out, how to be seen and heard and build their case?
So a big part of the work we're doing, and our company is called Humankind Partnership. And a big part of our work is telling untold or undertold stories. And so what we try to do is we try to go deeper than, let's say, the glossy picture, to say, okay, how did it happen? Why did it happen? And often what we encourage is what happens next, which I think is a different part of philanthropy right now too, is like, it's not enough to write the check. There's an expectation that companies will go beyond just the check writing. They'll engage their employees in the cause, and most especially, I think, and it's the unique part, I think, of corporate philanthropy, is how do you use a company's product to help during a disaster?
So give me an example of that, like a real life example of something you could think of.
So I think that there's several. One that I have firsthand and was involved with. They weren't natural disasters, but they were man-made disasters, I guess. Two of the ones I can think about when I was at United Airlines, one was the Columbine High School shootings, and another one was Oklahoma City. And at that point, it was really like, what does that community need? And what do we, as United Airlines, what can we provide? And what our product was moving people and equipment. And so immediately we were able to step in and give the thing that we could uniquely do. And so that's an example, and that goes back, a couple of decades now. But it really, to me, ushered in what we started to see with corporate philanthropy, especially around disaster response. And if you moved it forward to Katrina was a great example where companies across America brought whatever they were really good at, the thing that they did, they brought that into the recovery and the issue of resilience, building up communities after Katrina, after that event. So while companies gave money to nonprofits, they also gave their stuff. And I think that that's a unique part of corporate philanthropy.
Yeah, so whether you have a product or a service, I would think, to even, in your case, it was moving people. But whether they had blankets or whatever else they've got the whole supply chain piece that they could really assist with, for sure. Go ahead.
One thing that I think the thing about corporate philanthropy too is that at some point, when it comes to disaster response and disaster relief, there are playbooks now, and that's good. So there is pre-planning. So now I would imagine UPS and FedEx and any of the cargo carriers, as well as airlines, they already had their plan in place that they'll get supplies, they'll ship supplies from the closest place where they are to get as close as they can to the relief. And so that's already in place. So that's an important part, I think, of corporate philanthropy, is the pre-planning, so that you're not running around looking for a vice president to sign off on something. Instead, it's already done. And that allows you, a company, to be so much more responsive. They can really get to it more quickly. So I think those things are in place. But the other part, I think, of corporate philanthropy is that you're also always learning. Each situation is different. It's different because of the geography. It's different because of the time of year. It's different because of the natural roadblocks that might be in place. And so that's the other part of corporate philanthropy, is while you can pre-plan a lot of it, it's also being ready to do some learning on the fly. And I guess the last piece of that is, from my experience across all these different industries, was listening to the people closest to those who were impacted by whatever the disaster was. Because a lot of times they knew how to get aid there more quickly, or they knew things that about the community's needs that might take a long time to filter up through a large organization.
I'm curious as to your advice, or what approach is best. We see philanthropy in general, a lot of it goes to the immediate relief response. Right. It's harder to get the ear of a corporation or even a government when it comes to that preparedness piece, or the recovery and resiliency piece. And I'm just curious how your opinion on what kinds of strategies, what kinds of messaging a nonprofit could think about when it comes to trying to move the needle on that.
Leanne, I think you're exactly right, because people move on, companies move on, and there's oftentimes a feeling that you've done the work, and now something else has taken its place. And that makes it really hard, especially on the recovery and building that resilience piece of it. What I've seen in my career is that supporting more local businesses, so economic development councils, or even chambers of commerce, or an empowerment zone, those kinds of things are the ones that are left standing when everyone else has moved on. They've written the checks, they've brought that immediate help, whatever that help is that they would have, and now they've sort of retreated. to really make change, it's getting as close as you can, I think, to the real drivers for recovery. And oftentimes that's around the economic development. And so you do see companies do that, and you see them making those longer term kinds of commitments. We hope we see more of that. But that is a hallmark of those companies who I would say really get it. But I want to go back to what you said about 2020 and what an unusual year this is, because a big part of corporate philanthropy is doing a strategic plan. And when you can't be everything to everyone, being something special to someone, bringing the in-kind donations, the funding, the employee engagement, all that together around a cause. Well, I think this year we've seen those strategic plans, for the most part, be pushed aside because this enormous immediate need. And so it has been to COVID, but it's also been around social justice. And so those, I think we'll be studying that for a long time to see how that happened. We sort of know why it happened, but how were companies able to make that kind of really unprecedented shift away from, let's say, education or STEM or the environment or whatever that was, to really coalesce around these, in one case, a global need, and in the case of social justice, in the US at least, it feels like a national need.
And it's a good point, because I think of even in the work that I've done, we had plans, you have budgets that are allocated, and then all of a sudden your hair's on fire and you go, oh no, now I have to do something else. And,
right.
And so you can say, I can still do what I was supposed to do, but that makes no sense anymore. And so you do have to, be as nimble as possible. I think that's what people are learning. It's like, yeah, we'd love to have business as usual, and maybe one day we get there, but in the interim, you're seeing some pretty creative responses.
Really creative. And in thinking of 2021, because we have clients who have their budgets already either on the nonprofit side, who are involved in STEM education, especially for underrepresented populations and girls, women and girls. And we have clients who make that a focus of their giving. So on both sides of that. But in speaking to them, I said, I really think that 2021 is going to get us back to that STEM education. If we've learned one thing in 2020, it's been about science, and it's been about technology, and it's been about innovation. And so if you are running a nonprofit, I would think that serves youth, you would have a really good chance of getting funded if you're right in step with those kinds of needs that we're seeing globally. And I don't know, that's kind of what I think is going to be happening, as well as ongoing response on social justice and ongoing assistance on the aftermath or whatever it takes to get through the pandemic. But there's something about teaching that next generation and encouraging people to get involved in changing the world and helping them do that I think we'll be getting funding.
That's awesome. Well, before we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to mention?
It's the thing that I would mention just about corporate philanthropy is that it really has to feel aligned with the brand. And that's a really big part of it. It should make sense that the thing that you're engaged in somehow is what you're good at, and your employees are good at, and your employees are passionate about. And so I think that's part of the magic, is finding that unique way that that a company can get engaged authentically, and then tell the story of that. Because what we've seen and understand is that not just customers want to know that companies are stepping up and helping communities, but employees definitely want to know that. So retention and recruitment, all of those turn out to have or turn out to be impacted by a strong corporate philanthropic platform, I think.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, Eileen, thank you for taking time today to speak with me, and all the best with your company and in 2021 when you're helping them understand how to really make an impact.
Okay, thank you so much, Leanne. This has been so much fun. Thank you.
Okay, take care.